Beloved child, stop scrolling for a moment, because what you are about to hear was not placed before you by accident. Something has been waiting quietly for you, hidden beneath silence, hesitation, and words that were almost spoken many times but never reached your ears. Heaven has seen the questions you carried when no answer came. Heaven has seen the nights when you wondered whether the person you love ever felt the same depth, the same pull, the same unexplainable connection that your heart could not dismiss. And now, something has changed. The feelings they could no longer speak aloud have finally been placed into a letter. Do not rush past this moment. There is more inside that letter than a confession. There is a truth they have been afraid to face, a memory they have never forgotten, and a decision that may alter the path between you. They did not write these words casually. Their hands paused more than once. Their heart resisted. Their mind told them to tear the page apart and pretend the feelings were never real. But something stronger kept bringing them back to the letter. Something within them whispered that silence had already cost too much. You may believe they have been distant because they stopped caring. You may have interpreted their quietness as rejection, indifference, or the closing of a door. But the unseen story is different from what appearances have allowed you to believe. Their silence was not empty. It was crowded with thoughts of you. Their distance was not peaceful. It became a place where every memory grew louder. And every time they tried to convince themselves that they could continue without speaking their truth, your presence returned to them in ways they could not explain. There were ordinary moments when your name suddenly appeared in their mind. They would hear a familiar song and remember the way your voice changed when you were trying not to reveal too much emotion. They would see someone wearing a color you once wore, and for a second, the world around them would disappear. They would pass a place connected to you and feel an ache they could not admit to anyone. Even in crowded rooms, there were moments when they felt the absence of one person more strongly than the presence of everyone else. That person was you. The letter began on a night when they could no longer escape themselves. The room was quiet, but their thoughts were not. They had spent the day acting as though everything was normal. They spoke to people. They completed their responsibilities. They smiled at the expected moments. Yet beneath all of it, something was rising. A truth they had buried for too long was pressing against the walls of their heart, asking to be released. They sat alone and stared at a blank page. At first, they did not know how to begin. They wrote your name, then crossed it out. They wrote it again, more slowly this time, as though even the shape of the letters carried meaning. Their hand trembled because writing your name made the connection feel real again. It made every memory return without permission. It made the future they had tried not to imagine suddenly appear before them. They whispered to themselves, "How do I say what I should have said long ago?" That was the first question hidden inside the letter. But it was not the last. My child, you must understand something important. The person you love has been fighting two battles at once. One battle has been against their feelings for you. The other has been against the fear that those feelings may no longer matter because too much time has passed, too many misunderstandings have formed, or too much silence has settled between you. They are afraid that the version of them you remember is not the person you would choose now. They wonder whether you have already made peace with their absence. They question whether your heart has learned to live without the hope of them. And this fear has made every sentence difficult to write, because they are not simply confessing love. They are risking the possibility of discovering that they waited too long. Still, the letter exists. That alone carries meaning. There comes a moment when the heart becomes more afraid of permanent silence than temporary rejection. The person you love has reached that moment. They have spent too long imagining what might happen if they speak, but now they are beginning to fear what will happen if they never do. The first lines of the letter are not dramatic. They are simple. Almost too simple. But beneath them is a storm. They wrote, "I do not know whether I still have the right to say this, but I need you to know the truth." They paused after that sentence. They stared at it for a long time because the word truth frightened them. Truth demands responsibility. Truth removes the protection of pretending. Truth means they can no longer hide behind timing, confusion, pride, or circumstance. Once the truth reaches you, everything changes. Even if nothing happens immediately, the silence will never be the same again. They continued. "I have tried to convince myself that what I felt would fade. I thought distance would make it easier. I thought time would make me forget the details. But somehow, time did the opposite." My child, when they wrote those words, their eyes filled with tears. Not because they were weak, but because they finally admitted something they had denied for too long. Time did not erase you. It revealed you. At first, they believed they missed the comfort you brought. Then they realized they missed the way you understood what they were unable to explain. They missed the small things you may not even remember doing. The way you listened without rushing them. The way your presence softened their guardedness. The way you noticed changes in their mood before they said a word. The way you made them feel seen without forcing them to perform. They have met people since knowing you. They have had conversations. They have laughed. They have tried to move forward. But there was always something missing. And what frightened them most was that they could identify exactly what it was. It was not attention. It was not companionship. It was not admiration. It was the feeling of being known. You knew parts of them that others never reached. You saw behind the expressions they used to protect themselves. You recognized when their silence meant pain and when it meant fear. You understood that sometimes their distance was not a lack of love but an inability to believe they were safe enough to receive it. That truth appears in the letter too. They wrote, "You saw me before I knew how to let myself be seen." There is something extraordinary hidden inside that sentence. They are finally recognizing that your connection was not ordinary. It touched places within them they had kept closed for years. And because it touched those places, it also awakened every fear attached to them. They feared needing you. They feared disappointing you. They feared that if you saw the full truth of who they were, you might change your mind. So they did what frightened hearts often do. They created distance from the very person who made them feel closest to themselves. You may have blamed yourself for that distance. You may have replayed conversations, searching for the moment you did something wrong. You may have wondered whether you cared too much, spoke too honestly, waited too patiently, or gave too freely. But their withdrawal was not proof that you were unworthy. In many ways, it was proof that the connection had become more powerful than they knew how to handle. This does not excuse the pain their silence caused. Heaven is not asking you to deny your wounds. You are allowed to remember what it felt like to wait for clarity that never came. You are allowed to acknowledge the confusion, the disappointment, and the moments when hope became exhausting. Love does not require you to erase your experience. But you are now being shown the part of the story you could not see. The letter continues with a memory. They describe a moment between you that seemed small at the time. Perhaps you were sitting together, speaking about something ordinary. Perhaps you were walking, sharing silence without discomfort. Perhaps you looked at them in a way that made them feel, for one brief second, that they did not have to hide. They remember that moment with astonishing detail. They remember the light around you. They remember the sound of your voice. They remember what you said before the moment happened and what you said after. But more than anything, they remember what they felt. They wrote, "That was the moment I knew I could love you in a way that would change me." The moment frightened them because they sensed the depth before they were ready for it. They saw the possibility of a future. Not a perfect future, but a real one. A future of shared mornings, honest conversations, difficult seasons survived together, and ordinary moments made meaningful because you were there. For someone who had learned to protect themselves through emotional distance, that vision felt beautiful and dangerous at the same time. They wanted it. And they ran from it. This contradiction has haunted them. There were times when they nearly reached out. You may never know how close they came. They opened your messages, reread old conversations, or typed words they never sent. Sometimes they wrote only your name. Sometimes they wrote a full confession and deleted it before you could see it. Sometimes they waited for a sign from you while you were waiting for a sign from them. Two hearts stood on opposite sides of the same silence, each wondering whether the other had already walked away. But the silence is beginning to break. The person you love now understands that waiting for certainty has kept them trapped. They wanted proof that you still cared before admitting that they never stopped caring. They wanted reassurance before taking a risk. They wanted to know the ending before beginning the conversation. Yet love does not always offer certainty before courage. Sometimes courage must come first. This letter is their first true act of courage. They wrote, "I kept waiting for the perfect moment, but I am starting to understand that the perfect moment may never come. There is only the truth, and the choice to speak it." When they wrote that sentence, something inside them shifted. The letter stopped being a collection of thoughts and became a decision. Up to that point, they could still pretend it was only a private exercise, something they would fold away and hide. But after those words, they began imagining you reading it. They imagined your eyes moving across the page. They imagined your expression changing. They imagined you reaching the part they feared most. And that is when they stopped writing. For several minutes, they could not continue. Because the next truth was not only about love. It was about what happened behind the silence. There is a reason they pulled away when the connection was becoming stronger. There is a reason they became inconsistent when their feelings were becoming clearer. There is a reason they acted unaffected when everything within them was being affected. They have been carrying an old wound into this connection. This wound did not begin with you, but you felt the consequences of it. Someone in their past taught them that vulnerability could be used against them. Perhaps they trusted and were abandoned. Perhaps they spoke honestly and were made to feel foolish. Perhaps they loved someone who made affection conditional, offering warmth one day and withdrawal the next. Whatever form it took, the lesson settled deeply inside them: do not reveal how much you care, because the person who knows your heart holds the power to break it. Then you appeared. You were not the one who created the fear, but your importance activated it. The more they cared, the more they feared losing control. The more they imagined a future, the more they remembered the past. The more safe you made them feel, the more terrified they became that the safety could disappear. They did not know how to tell you this. So instead of saying, "I am afraid because you matter," they became quiet. Instead of saying, "I need reassurance," they acted distant. Instead of saying, "Please do not leave," they created circumstances that made you believe they wanted space. This is one of the most painful truths in the letter. They know now that their fear may have looked like rejection. They know their self-protection may have wounded the person they were trying not to lose. They know that by refusing to show their heart, they may have convinced you they did not have one. And they regret it deeply. They wrote, "I am sorry for every moment my fear made you question your worth." My child, those words came from a place of real realization. They are beginning to understand the weight of what you carried. They see now that you were not asking for perfection. You were asking for honesty. You did not need them to have every answer. You needed them to stop leaving you alone with questions. They remember moments when you gave them opportunities to speak. You may have asked whether something was wrong. You may have told them they could be honest. You may have waited with patience, hoping they would finally open the door. They wanted to. But they could not find the language. Now the language is coming. The letter grows more emotional after the apology. Their words become less controlled. The sentences are no longer carefully arranged. Some are written quickly, as though everything inside them is rushing toward the page at once. They confess that they have imagined seeing you again. They have imagined what they would say. They have imagined whether you would look at them with warmth, caution, sadness, or nothing at all. That last possibility terrifies them. They can bear your anger more easily than your indifference. Anger would mean the connection still carries emotion. But indifference would mean the door may truly be closed. They wrote, "I am afraid that while I was trying to protect my heart, I taught yours how to stop waiting for me." That is the fear keeping them awake now. They sense that you have changed. You are not standing in the same emotional place where they left you. You have grown through the silence. You have learned things about yourself. You have become more aware of what you deserve and less willing to accept confusion disguised as connection. They admire this growth, but they also fear it. The stronger you become, the more clearly they understand that love alone will not be enough. They cannot return with vague promises. They cannot offer partial truth and expect complete trust. They cannot ask you to open your heart while keeping theirs hidden. The letter is their attempt to come without a mask. But there is still something they have not written. Something they have rehearsed many times. Something that could change the meaning of everything before it. The person you love is not only confessing what they feel. They are preparing to reveal what they have decided. For a long time, they believed their feelings were the problem. They thought if they could suppress them, ignore them, or bury them beneath responsibility and distraction, life would become simpler. But suppressing love did not create peace. It created restlessness. They began noticing that every path away from you still carried echoes of you. They could choose silence, but silence contained your name. They could choose distance, but distance measured how far they were from you. They could choose distraction, but every distraction eventually ended, leaving them alone with the same truth. They love you. Not in the effortless, convenient way they once thought love was supposed to feel. They love you in a way that has exposed their fears, challenged their patterns, and forced them to confront the parts of themselves they had avoided. That is why this connection has felt so intense. It has not only awakened affection. It has awakened transformation. And transformation is rarely comfortable. Heaven has been working in the spaces neither of you could understand. While you were learning not to abandon yourself for love, they were learning that love cannot survive where honesty is constantly postponed. While you were rebuilding your confidence, they were being confronted by the consequences of fear. While you were asking why the connection entered your life, they were discovering why they could not escape its meaning. This does not guarantee an easy reunion. It does not erase choices, timing, or free will. But it does reveal that the story is not as empty as the silence made it appear. The letter proves that something has been moving beneath the surface. They have kept it hidden, but not because it means nothing. Because it means too much. There is a folded section near the end of the letter. They almost stopped before writing it. The words beneath that fold are different. More direct. More vulnerable. They do not speak only of the past. They speak of what they want now. They begin with a question. What would happen if I stopped being afraid and told you everything? They do not answer immediately. Instead, they describe a dream they have held quietly. In that dream, there is no dramatic rescue, no perfect timing, and no magical absence of difficulty. There are simply two people sitting together with nothing hidden between them. They tell you why they disappeared emotionally. You tell them what their silence did to you. They listen without defending themselves. You listen without having to pretend you were not hurt. And for the first time, both of you speak from truth rather than fear. They imagine asking for another chance, not to repeat the old story, but to begin differently. They imagine building slowly. They imagine earning what cannot be demanded. They imagine proving through consistency what words alone cannot establish. But they are also aware that this may not be their choice alone. That realization humbles them. The letter does not assume you will return simply because they finally found courage. It does not demand forgiveness. It does not ask you to forget your pain. Instead, it places the truth before you and gives you the freedom they were once too afraid to give. They wrote, "I do not know what you will choose after reading this. But I could no longer let you believe you were easy for me to lose." That sentence carries the weight of every unsent message. You were not easy to lose. They only made it look that way. They felt your absence in ways they never admitted. They noticed when communication changed. They noticed when your energy became quieter. They noticed when you stopped reaching in the same way. And although they told themselves this was what they wanted, their heart recognized it as loss. There were moments when they almost surrendered to the belief that the connection had ended for good. Yet each time, something reminded them that unfinished truth has a way of returning. A dream. A memory. A familiar phrase. A sudden feeling they could not explain. They began wondering whether you could sense them too. They wondered whether, in quiet moments, you still felt the connection moving beneath the surface. They wondered whether your heart ever paused without reason, as if remembering something your mind had tried to release. My child, perhaps that is why these words found you now. Not to tell you what you must do. Not to command your heart. But to prepare you for truth. Because the person you love has reached the final page. The letter is nearly complete. Yet the most important sentence remains unfinished. They have written your name at the top. They have confessed their fear. They have apologized for their silence. They have admitted that time did not erase you. They have revealed the memory that changed them. They have told you that losing you was never easy. But beneath all of that, one final truth is waiting. It is the reason the letter was written now instead of later. It is the reason they could not sleep. It is the reason they kept the page instead of destroying it. And it is connected to a choice they must make soon. They lowered the pen after beginning the sentence. I need to tell you this before. Then they stopped. Not because they changed their mind. Because someone interrupted them. A sound came from outside the room. A message appeared on their phone. A name flashed across the screen, and the moment they saw it, the color left their face. That message was connected to you. It contained information they had not expected. Information that made them look back at the unfinished sentence and realize they may have less time than they believed. They read the message once. Then again. Their breathing changed. The letter remained open before them, your name visible beneath the soft light, while one question moved through their mind with increasing urgency. Have I waited until it is too late? They reached for the pen again. This time, their hand did not hesitate. They completed the sentence. But what they wrote next is the part of the letter that changes everything.